Hi, thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Nada Youssef. We all know that sleep comes with a long list of health benefits, everything from reducing inflammation and stress to improving cognitive function and more. A good night's sleep also regulates good moods, increases productivity, and gives our immune system a much needed boost. Whether you've had sleeping problems before this global pandemic or if they've only come on recently, Dr. Drerup is here to share with us a few tips on how to get a great sleep amid this pandemic. Dr. Michelle Drerup is a psychologist as well as the director of behavioral sleep medicine in Cleveland Clinic. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And please remember, this is for informational purposes only, and it's not intended to replace your own physician's advice. Isolation, school closures, quarantines, and working from home all bring profound changes to normal routines for people of all ages and walks of life. Can you talk to us a little bit about why sleep is vital during a pandemic?
Well, you mentioned it in your introduction that sleep has a significant impact on our immune functioning. So number one, as we're wanting to make sure that we're less susceptible to the virus, getting adequate sleep is one way we can do that. There are studies that show that when people are sleep deprived and are exposed to the common cold virus, they have higher rates of acquiring a cold. So we know it has a significant impact on not only immunity, but also our emotional and mental health as well. So while we're under the stress of the current situation, getting adequate sleep can help us deal with that.
Now, when you talk about sleep deprivation, are there signs that we can tell right away if we are sleep deprived or if our kids are sleep deprived?
One of the most common is that you feel sleepy during the daytime and you feel the need to have a nap, or you're dozing off when you're not intentionally doing that. Another common symptom of being sleep deprived is an impact on your mood. So maybe you're more irritable, less patient, more unable to control emotions. That's a symptom. But we have physical symptoms of it, and things like feeling, hungrier or, having headaches, things like that, as well as the emotional or mental.
Great. Now, many are finding ourselves fatigued during this time. Can we talk about how to maintain a healthy sleep schedule and routine during this stressful time, both for adults and kids, if it's different?
Yeah, so it's a challenge we're seeing for a lot of our patients, but on the other hand, some of our patients that had sleep problems are actually sleeping better now during the pandemic because they can sleep more according to what their natural circadian tendency is. So the individual who's more of a night owl and they don't have the long commute in the morning anymore, they can get that extra hour of sleep, and it actually feels much better for them and they sleep better. So whatever the schedule it is that you're keeping, it's being consistent with it. So same thing with our kids. If your children are sleeping a little later in the morning, it's keeping consistent with that schedule right now.
Great, and that was actually going to be my next question, because with working from home, some people not working, and schools, everything being done at home, kids are sleeping in. And maybe we are sleeping in. It's not a bad thing if it's consistent, then you're saying?
Right. Oversleeping is a problem. So say you're sleeping, usually you would get 8 hours of sleep and that would be fine. And now you find yourself sleeping 9, 10 hours. Oversleeping can actually make us feel more tired. But if it's just that, when my kids are off in the summer, they tend to sleep a little later and sleep in a little later. And now we're keeping that same schedule, but it's consistent. Say they're going to bed an hour later than they normally would and wake an hour later. Just that they're getting an adequate amount of sleep. They're meeting their sleep needs as well as, staying consistent with that.
Sure. Now, with a lot of meetings, work meetings, school, everything turning virtual, like this interview right here, we find ourselves in front of screens a lot, and TV, computers. Can this be affecting our sleep and our kids' sleep?
It can, especially if we're doing a lot of screen time in the evenings. And so we know that the blue light that's emitted from our screens has an impact on our melatonin production. So it inhibits melatonin production. So trying to avoid screens as much as possible within a couple hours for bedtime is ideal. During the daytime, the thing to do would be trying to get outside and getting some natural light on days that we have sunlight to help keep our circadian rhythm kind of on track.
Excellent. Now, even with a reasonable bedtime, I find myself having fragmented sleep, and you wake up in the middle of the night. And what is the best way to go right back to bed or to fall back asleep naturally?
So number one, it's to not have your phone next to the bed, because that lures us into, oh, I'm just going to check my email real quick, and then go down the rabbit hole. Other things to do would be trying to do something to distract from maybe some of the stress and worries that are on our minds now. So a lot of people are using different meditation apps or listening to music, something like that, to kind of tune our focus too. And so some of those thoughts don't start to ramble around in our head.
Okay, so no phones and kind of meditation app or soft symphonies to calm
Right.
our
Now,
brains down.
the phone is oftentimes the way we access those.
Right.
So there's a little bit of a conundrum there, but it's really, that I put the app on and I let it go, and I'm not on my phone scrolling through social media and things like that.
Now, with schools canceled and doing everything at home, we do have some kind of schedule at home, but when summer starts and kids don't have anything to do, would these long-term consequences affect our health with sleep disruption?
Yeah, I mean, in summer, hopefully it'll be easier for us to have our kids out and active, because that's the best thing for sleep is increased physical activity. So that will increase sleep drive. But also the same thing, in terms of a summer schedule is, even if it's a delayed schedule, trying to keep consistent with that schedule and trying to find things to keep them engaged and more active during the daytime.
Yeah, and hopefully put them to bed early and make them more tired.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you about dreams. Is there a connection between anxiety and disturbing dreams? Because I feel like many people have been talking about having kind of crazy dreams during this whole pandemic, and maybe it's because of the pandemic that's scaring people, or what could it be?
Yeah, there definitely is a connection. We saw this post 9/11 as well, that people were having an increase in kind of vivid, disturbing dreams or nightmares. And so there is a connection. One of the theories behind, we don't know a lot about why we dream still. It's hard to measure, because it's when we're sleeping and you're aware of it happening. But, one of the things that we believe about dreaming is that you're kind of processing things from the day. It's a way of kind of your brain trying to file away information. So it doesn't always make sense. It's kind of pieces and parts of things. But when we're kind of been more inundated with things that are stressful, it tends to come out in our dreams. So that definitely plays a role. Things to do to try to decrease that occurrence would be trying to avoid watching the news before bedtime, doing things that are more relaxing and kind of unplugging before bedtime, so that's not what you go into the night with. And another reason why we may be actually having more awareness of of having these dreams is that if we're spending more time in bed and we're getting more REM sleep occurs in the latter morning period. That's, if we're waking out of REM, that's when we remember our dreams. So it also could be just in terms of what's happening with our sleep pattern that is increasing.
I see. Very good. I know we talked about naps a little bit earlier, and you mentioned, if you're sleep deprived, you were going to want to nap. But are naps important? I mean, now that we're home all the time and we have time to nap, are naps important, and how long should they really be?
So, if you have sleep difficulties at night, they probably should be eliminated to see if that will improve your sleep if you're having fragmented sleep at night. But we always recommend that, naps can be really helpful, but they should be, we kind of call them smart naps. They should be shorter. They should be earlier in the day. Usually after lunch is a good time for people because our circadian rhythm is actually pushing us a little more towards sleep at that time. But really limiting it to that idea of a power nap, 15, 20 minutes. When you sleep longer than that, you start to go into deeper stages of sleep. And so people will find, like, if I took an hour and a half, 2 hour nap, I feel groggy after I wake, I feel worse. And then longer naps are going to be more likely to take away from your night's sleep. So one thing that you can do if you're feeling tired or sleepy during the daytime is actually combine the benefits of caffeine and having a short nap, and we call it a caff nap. So you would drink a little bit of caffeine, take your nap, 15, 20-minute power nap. And so when you're waking up from the nap, the caffeine is actually starting to hit and makes you even more alert.
Now, with children, no longer infants that actually need to nap, but children themselves, if they're not napping during the day, is it something that we should be encouraging if they're sleeping late and waking up late? Or do you think naps should only be for whoever is feeling like they need to sleep?
Yeah, really, naps aren't necessary after preschool, essentially, right? Most kids are dropping their last nap at the age of 5. And so if they're getting an adequate amount of sleep during the daytime or during the night, then a nap isn't necessary. Now, you might want a nap so that you have a little quiet time or downtime, right? But yeah, they're not necessary. I think it is important to have time for kids that during the daytime where you kind of call it quiet time. And if they fall asleep because they're sleepy, that's okay. But also just kind of unplugging them for a little bit, that, okay, you can look at your books in your room, you can do something quietly for the next half hour to get them also comfortable with, like, it's okay to be bored and I can find something to do during that time, that I don't need something entertaining me. So
now, to the important question. Now, how do we improve our overall sleep and make sure we're getting the best sleep possible right now? Can you give us tips and hints on what to do?
So we've talked about some of these, and it's kind of combining a lot of these pieces for individuals. So, starting with the morning, keeping a consistent wake time, you have to think about that as, this is my anchor, and my sleep drive is going to be building from this time. So if I vary that a lot, then I'm going to not be ready for sleep at the same time every night. So a wake time consistently is much more important than I should be in bed at X amount of time.
Mhm.
So you want to have a goal bedtime. Say, I'm going to aim to be in bed by 11. So if I wake up at 7, I have 8 hours. But, if you're not sleepy at 11 and you go to bed, you're just going to lay there and start to think. So it's really kind of winding yourself down, having a buffer zone to be ready for bed, but delaying your bedtime if you're not really sleepy. The things that, are disruptors now are, binge watching Netflix, right? So I'm just watching a show. Oh, one more. Now, I might have been sleepy, but I kind of blew through that sleepiness. So it's going to keep me awake, and I could have fallen asleep earlier. Getting activity, exercise, getting outdoors, getting that light exposure, especially in the morning during the day, is really important as well.
And many find ourselves late night snacking. Does that affect our sleep?
So it can. Late night snacking can be, disruptive to sleep. Some people will find, like, if especially if they have reflux issues, that will worsen that. It can cause more disturbing nightmares as well, and more vivid dreams. And your digestive system is a stimulating process, so it can keep you awake. Now, and obviously, the thing sometimes we like to snack on are sweets, things that might actually have caffeine in, like chocolate. So really being mindful of that as well.
Now, with going back to work and some of the jobs getting their employees back, some daycares opening, can you tell us what we can do to make sure our sleep schedule is on par and that we can wake up early and we're getting our full 8 hours of sleep?
So if, let's say, you've been going to bed a couple hours later, waking up a couple hours later, as soon as you know your time frame of when you're going to be going back into the office, what I would recommend is gradually shifting your bedtime and wake time in like 15 to 20-minute increments every couple of nights. So, this is oftentimes what we recommend for people with daylight savings times as well, that gradually shifting slowly versus, okay, well, I woke up at 10 o'clock and now I'm going to try to go to bed at 9 p.m. tonight. You're not going to fall asleep. So it's just a gradual shifting of the sleep schedule.
So how many hours should I be sleeping to know that I'm not going to be sleep deprived? And does that change for kids, infants, newborns, and so on?
So most adults, the average sleep need is 7 to 9 hours. But everybody's sleep need is different. So some people will sleep 6 hours, they feel refreshed, they don't feel sleepy during the day, they function fine, and that might be their sleep need. But on average, most people are in that 7 to 9 as adults. Now, our younger ones, when we're babies sleep 14 to 17 hours in 24 hours. They don't sleep at all in one consolidated period, as parents will, unfortunately experience and be able to tell you. But then as kids get older, probably our most vulnerable population is our teenage population. They still have a little bit higher sleep need. They should really be getting, probably 9 to 10 hours a night. And oftentimes they're getting less than even adults based on their obligations and things. So this time of the pandemic is one of the things that we're seeing. Sleep tracker data has been published looking at this, and that we're actually getting a little more sleep. So there has been a positive thing. It's just trying to figure out how do we maintain this increased sleep time when we go back to our other schedules.
And lastly, do adults and kids both take the same approach to a good night's sleep? Because the way I approach going to bed at night when I can't sleep at 11, like you mentioned, versus my kids can't sleep at 11, telling them not to go on the electronics and just to, read a book. Is there anything we could do for kids that could be a little bit different or adjusted to help them sleep better?
It's funny because the things that we usually do for kids, we should be doing as adults, and we don't do, right? So for a child, the thing that we do to help them, train them to sleep is we have a very similar routine that, okay, we're going to brush your teeth, we get your pajamas on, we read 2 stories. Most people would know I should not let my kid be on the TV, to help them fall asleep, or to have the phone or iPad, right? But we do that as adults. And so I think we need to be more like how we are with our kids, and it would help us sleep better. Now, there are some great apps out there for kids as well. So some of the things like using there's different versions of the meditation apps. I think that would be fine to use, and people are like, well, what if I have to use that to help me fall asleep? Is that like a crutch? Is that a bad thing? Well, if it's not something that, you can take it with you, you can have it wherever you're at. It's not something that it's a real negative. Maybe you need it to help you fall asleep, but that's not a problem. More so becomes problematic if, say, well, I rock my child or I rub their back and that helps them fall asleep. Well, then I have to be there, right? So we want to try to make it so that it can be something that they can do on their own to help them wind down versus having to have somebody present.
So having like an app or music, something like that, is not a bad thing to get used to. It's not bad to fall asleep with the phone on, some kind of meditation app.
No.
That's
and
good.
we do it for infants, right? When we have the sound machines, right? We use those to help them, so very similar ideas.
Excellent. So sound like routine and consistency is key for all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today. And hopefully with this information, we'll all be still steer clear of any sleep problems during this pandemic. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
I would say that we do have behavioral sleep medicine specialists. If someone is really feeling like I'm trying some of these strategies, they're not helping, I'm feeling really anxious about sleep. When someone has more chronic problems, it becomes really about not necessarily other stressors that might be influencing my sleep, but I'm stressed about not sleeping. And that makes me have a lot of anxiety just at bedtime and through the night. And it kind of becomes a vicious cycle.
Sure.
So that at the Cleveland Clinic and a lot of other places, there are psychologists like myself that provide, it's called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And it's really addressing the behaviors as well as the thoughts that maintain insomnia, so that there is help out there. And medications are not necessarily a bad thing short term, but don't provide a really good long-term solution versus cognitive behavioral therapy has really good efficacy, both in the short term as well as long term outcomes.
Thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated.
You bet.
So for more resources on sleep disorders or to make an appointment with a specialist, please visit clevelandclinic.org/sleep. And for the latest coronavirus news and updates from Cleveland Clinic, please visit clevelandclinic.org/coronavirus. Thank you so much for tuning in and stay safe.